Hi, everyone. This is a silent session, which means that you need your headphones to listen to everything that's going to happen during this session, even the online speakers. If you do not have one, you can get one from the nice lady at the door. This session is also interpreted from Arabic to English. You can get your Arabic to English translation on the application, which is found for World Water Week. You can access it with your own headphones and get interpretation, live interpretation from Arabic to English and from English to Arabic. You will need the Arabic to English translation because we do have one Arabic presentation. The slides are going to be in English, but our speaker is going to speak in Arabic. To start, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Laura Nassar, and I work with SIWI in our new regional office in Amman, Jordan. I'm here together with my colleague Manal and our colleagues from UNICEF. To start off with this session, just to run you through it very quickly, we're going to start off with an opening and welcoming remark from the League of Arab States. And then our colleague Manal is going to give a short presentation to set the scene. After that, we're going to have 3 cases from 3 different countries, which are going to join us online, from Djibouti, Iraq, and Palestine. After that, we're going to have a panel discussion with our esteemed panelists. And after that, we're going to have some questions and reflections about this session. After that, we're very lucky to have Ms. Cecilia, who is going to give us the closing remarks for this session. Your Excellency, Ms. Shahira Wahbi from the League of Arab States is going to give an opening remark. Ms. Shahira, please.
Thank you very much. Let me first welcome all of you to this session on strengthening wash systems for a water-secure MENA region, being held during this prestigious World Water Week. Today, we gather to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time, ensuring access to clean water and sanitation in the MENA region, especially in the face of climate change and water scarcity. We all know that water is a fundamental human right, and its sustainable management is crucial for the well-being and prosperity of communities across the world, and this region is no exception. Actually, we have reasons that reinforce our interest in this subject, as will be evident from this session. During our session today, we will explore together diverse innovative approaches, tools, and mechanisms that can effectively integrate a climate lens in the wash sector programming. We will hear success stories from the MENA region showcasing achieved results and discussing key lessons learned, challenges faced, and future perspectives. We are honored to have with us a distinguished panel representing different sectors and perspectives. We will provide insights into the current governance frameworks, policies, and challenges faced. We will also hear from a funding agency representatives shedding light on funding priorities, investment strategies, and the importance of governance in securing financial support for climate resilience wash services. In addition, we are privileged to have a UNICEF showcase how youth are actively engaged in climate-related initiatives in the region. Their perspective on the role of youth in addressing governance challenges and the innovative approaches taken will surely inspire and energize us. Through open and dynamic discussions, we hope to uncover practical and actionable steps to strengthen wash systems and pave the way for a water-secure future in our region. Thank you all for being here, and let us work together to make this session an outstanding success. Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Engineer Manal Shreide give us a presentation to set the scene. Manal has been working for SIWI for the past 3 years now, and going on the third. She has extensive experience in the field for over the next 12 years. Please.
Thank you, Lara. Hello, everyone. This is Manal Shreide. I'm really glad to be here today to present about the ongoing activities that we do in the MENA region in terms of improving the wash system. Can you go for the first slide? Before I start, I would like to thank UNICEF MENA Regional Office, because this session was organized in close cooperation with the Regional Office in Amman as a part of the agreed activities between SIWI and UNICEF MENA. So we worked in the region based on the partnership agreement, which is 3 years partnership. First slide you see here summarize the outcome of the regional study that was conducted in close cooperation with them to analyze the water scarcity and the climate change enabling environment in the MENA region. And as you can see in the slide, around 14 out of 17 most scarce countries are from the MENA region, meaning that the region is really subjected to water stress. And looking at the total renewable water resources compared to the global one, it's like 1/10 from the global median. And also the water allocation per sector, as you can see in the diagram, it's like 70%. And sometimes in some countries, it's like 80% allocated for agriculture sector. That's drive us to think that really the MENA region is really subjected to a water scarcity. We need to think in improving the wash system, water and sanitation system there. Her Excellency just explained about policies, strategies, and how we can improve the sector financing. And now we will hear that in the panel discussion. But shortly, as recommended by Lara, I need to cut my presentation. Just want to reflect about wash services coverage in the WANA region based on GMP data. As you can see, if we compare the progress from the development since the development of the SDG agenda, so we can see that we have improvement, but we need to improve that. We need more improvement for wash and sanitation coverage in the region. As you can see here, since SIWI has experience in water governance, so we focus a lot on improving the policy framework, the institutional agreement in the sector, how we can monitor the performance of the services, and also how we can improve the finance. Then next slide, please. Thank you. And then looking at the fact that now we will have like 3 case study who will present about how we can use governance tool to improve wash system in the region. As you can see in this slide, SIWI has cooperated with UNICEF in many country offices, not only the 3 cases and other countries, to improve the wash system. And that happens first, as you can see, the first tool here, it's WashReg, which is really focused on improving the regulation framework for wash sector. Another tool, it's like wash bottleneck analysis. And in many cases, we managed to integrate climate change into that tool. I don't want to explain these tools, but it's just to show that governance is a tool really that used to improve the wash system strengthening in the region. And now I will hand over for Lara to present the case study. We will hear from the country offices how they managed to use and adapt these tools according to the local context in these countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is, we're going to talk about the Djibouti case. From Djibouti, we have Mr. Jean Kamsou. Jean, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Jean? Yeah. Okay. He's the WASH specialist from the Water and Environmental Engineer, and he's currently the Chief of Water Section in UNICEF Djibouti. Are you online with us, Jean?
Yes, we are connected. Yeah. Hello, can you hear us?
You're going to have to tell me. Sorry. You're going to have to tell me to move the slides once every slide is done.
Okay, I can't see your screen. Should I share my screen or you can do it from your computer? Okay,
yes.
Perfect. Okay, Excellency, panel members, and good morning, everyone. I'm around the table with our colleagues from the Ministry of Rural Agriculture. We conducted the exercise together. Okay, we are glad to share with you our experience in implementing this analysis using washback tools in Djibouti. So, as you can see, Djibouti is a country of the Horn of Africa, one of the most affected by climate change country with continued increased temperature. And as you can see in Djibouti, we have many types, we have several risks due to climate change, including especially water scarcity. And also we are facing a lot of challenge due to the fact that there's still an ongoing decrease of the groundwater table, which cause a lot of problem regarding boreholes, which is a main source of main source for water supply in Djibouti. We are also facing in Djibouti several issues with several damage registered on the water supply infrastructure. And also this leads to many challenges at community level for management of existing water supply system. Also in Djibouti, we are facing a lot of challenge regarding behavior in line with sanitation and lack of good hygiene practices. All those challenges are exacerbated by climate change impact. And this is in this context that we conducted the washback exercise slide. I think we are on the same page. And the washback exercise in Djibouti have been implemented in two phases. Okay, the first phase have been conducted in November, focusing on rural area. And the second phase conducted in November on the next year, 2021, focusing on urban area. You will see that the main purpose of that this analysis was to identify bottlenecks in order to see what are the key challenges or bottlenecks that we have when we wanted to put in place an enabling environment for wash sector, especially in the context of climate change, as I was saying earlier, and continue increase of waterborne disease, and also during COVID-19 pandemic. The analysis was focusing on those specific areas. Okay, we conduct the analysis focusing on policy and strategies, looking into institutional arrangement, existing one, and also trying to assess planification and monitoring and monitor evaluation system and learning, which are in place in Djibouti. Also trying to look at financing and budgeting system for the sector. Also, we try to look into the capacity development through, and this exercise have been conducted through joint meeting and consultation, plenary discussion with all stakeholders at country level involved in the management of wash sector. In terms of key, let's say, this now is the process, okay? The process that we follow to implement this analysis using the washback tools. We start by doing an initial remote assessment of country wash environment status. And moving from that, we try to understand, see the integration, try to revise the tools by integrating climate change perspective in Djibouti washback exercise. This was one of the major things, taking into consideration the huge impact that climate change has on Djibouti, especially regarding access to water. We also and then we move to face-to-face capacity building for facilitator, because key facilitators have been identified at national level, coming from different ministries involved in the management of wash system of wash at national level. And also it was an inclusive exercise. We bring together different stakeholders and specialists from different ministry through a workshop and plenary discussion to try to come out with the key issue. Slide. And when we conduct that exercise, we come out with several priority and an action plan to see how or what we can do to address those bottlenecks in order to improve access to potable water and sanitation to community in Djibouti. And among those priorities, this was the key one that we decided that we want to share with you around planification, institutional disposal, and at the level of service provision. In terms of planification, one of the key interventions of the bottleneck that was identified was the need to adapt, the need to develop the guideline for integration of climate change issue in all K-WASH programming documents. Because when discussing and seeing, we realized that there was a lot of challenge, but most of those challenges were due to the fact that there was a gap between existing documents and practices with the impact that climate change has on the environment, which was not clearly taken into account and which was causing a huge problem. So we decided to come out with some guidelines for integrating climate change issue in the programming. And also we tried to, we convened that it was good to adjust the existing strategy and policy for wash sector. And we agreed that this should be updated. We also convened to develop a strategy to involve private sector as much as possible, because we realized that everything was most government centralized. And we saw that if we succeed to involve private sector, it could help to address some bottlenecks identified around sanitation. And also, we are going to reinforce monitoring system, because we realized that was one of the gaps, lack of the evidence to support planification in the sector. In terms of institutional disposal, for example, we come out with the agreement was to develop a mechanism for continued capacity building of technical staff, because technical capacity was one of the key bottlenecks identified, and also organize exchange visit, because we saw that it could be good for Djibouti country office to go and learn from other countries, especially to see how we can innovate to improve what we are doing. And at the level of service providing, of service provision, was around improving water service through reinforcing equipment, and also build capacity of actors in charge of water supply, especially in urban area, as well as strengthening capacity. So far, since 2021, that we have the final report of the washback, we can say that several progress or achievement have been registered. Here we are not going to share with you all the detailed achievement, but we can summarize it by saying that notable progress have been achieved in rural area by involving community in water management system and mechanism. Now the government is committed for community management. We are on the way to develop a strategy for community involvement in water supply system management, especially in rural area. And also, all what was agreed are now integrated in UNICEF annual work plan with the government. In urban area, there was just few progress were registered because due to climate change, the government adopts now a strategy to change. There's a youth program ongoing, especially carrying water from Ethiopia to Djibouti, and and in urban area in Djibouti, everything around water supply and sanitation is mainly centralized around Oneyad, which is like a government and a private sector combined company. And there was a lack of funding to really support them, but we are still in touch with them to see how we can push ahead to address all the issue and what we agree during the work-based exercise. And the last point, last achievement is that all the results from the wash-back analysis are now using for discussion with potential donors. As you can see, especially one of the key who are supporting the sector, World Bank, the African Development Bank, and any other donors. We are now also inspiring ourselves from all those, the findings will come out from the washback to see how we can enriching all the strategy we are under development. In terms now, as a conclusion, we can say that washback exercise in Djibouti was conducted in two phases. One of the good practices that we saw was the adjustment of the tools to integrate climate change issue in the existing tool. And we have one exercise targeting rural area, another targeting urban area. It was an inclusive exercise who bring together different actors and ministry institutions working on the sectors, being on water, sanitation, or hygiene in the country. Also, the washback exercise in Djibouti was very useful and helped to define key action to improve provision of sustainable wash facilities in community in the context of climate change and COVID-19 pandemic. This also helped us to have a baseline for discussion with different donors, and now is helping us to enriching the development of tools for planning in the sectors. And we are, okay, and that is the end. We are still using those findings for discussion and fundraising purpose. Over to you. I think we may have opportunity to jump in again, to come out with some clarification or some details during exchange. Over. Thank you.
Thank you. You can hear me now. Jean, thank you so much. We're gonna move. We'd like to ask you to stay until the end of the session because we might have some questions for you. We're gonna move to our next presentation from Palestine. Omar, are you there? Just to introduce you. From Iraq, sorry. From Iraq. Engineer Omar Saleh is the manager of Information Systems Center at the Ministry of Construction and Housing and Public Municipalities in Iraq. He's with us online. Omar, can you hear me?
Yes. Hear you. Yes.
Very
نعم.
good.
أسمعك.
تمام. Just for our listeners, this presentation is going to be in Arabic. If you would like translation, please use the World Water Week translation services provided. The slides are going to be in English, so you can also follow the presentation. عمر أنا رح أطلب منك بس كل سلايد، بس بدك يعني أنقل على كل سلايد، بليز احكي لي next سلايد لأنه الكنترول من عندي.
أوكي.
تمام.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم. يواجه العراق حاليا أزمة مياه حادة، حيث يحتل المرتبة 39 على مستوى العالم من حيث الإجهاد المائي. من المتوقع أن يزداد الوضع سوءا بحلول العام 2040 إذا استمرت نفس المنهجية المتبعة للإدارة الحالية. تتفاقم ندرة المياه في البلاد بسبب عوامل مثل تدهور جودة المياه وعدم كفاءة الإدارة والقدرات المؤسسية والافتقار إلى اللوائح المناسبة، كذلك عدم كفاية البنى التحتية بسبب نقص الاستثمار. هذه كلها أدت إلى تتدهور في جودة المياه في العراق بسبب التلوث أيضا، مما يؤدي إلى تفاقم مشكلة ندرة المياه. في العراق يعترف بالحصول على مياه الشرب كحق أساسي للمواطنين. كانت نسبة المخدومين للمياه الصالحة للشرب حوالي 90%، بس بسبب الأوضاع الأخيرة وبسبب داعش وغيرها أدت إلى أنه يكون نسبة المخدومين من المياه في العراق إلى 60% خلال السنوات الماضية. نيكست. لدعم تفعيل الإطار التنظيمي المحسن، استخدمت اليونيسيف في العراق منهجية الووش ريج التي ينفذها معهد ستوكهولم الدولي للمياه، حيث تدعم الووش ريج الوصول إلى إطار تنظيمي محسن ومتجدد لخدمات المياه والصرف الصحي. الووش ريج هو بالأساس هو نهج يحدد التحديات التنظيمية وفرص التحسين من خلال إشراك جميع جهات العلاقة، من خلال القيام بإجراءات وحلول عملية لتعزيز الأدوار والمسؤوليات التنظيمية. ففي هذا المجال نظم المكتب اليونيسيف في العراق بالتعاون مع سوي ورشة عمل الووشريج في مايو 2023. حللت ورشة العمل مستوى إطار تنظيم المياه والصرف الصحي والنظافة الصحية في 4 مجالات تنظيمية من المجالات التنظيمية ال6 المعتمدة لدى سوي. نيكست. كان هنالك هدف الأساسي من الورشة، يعني الورشة هدفت إلى مجموعة من الأهداف. أول هدف من هذه الأهداف هو توفير معلومات أساسية عن الطرق المتبعة في تنظيم المياه والصرف الصحي والنظافة الصحية. هل هناك، يعني السؤال، هل هناك آلية تنظيمية موجودة في العراق أو لا؟ وما هي المعلومات الأساسية حول هذه الآلية؟ ثاني هدف كان من أهداف هذه الورشة هو استكشاف أداة تخطيط المساءلة. من هي الجهة المسؤولة؟ ما هي دور الحكومة؟ ما هو دور المواطن؟ ما هو دور المنظمات في هذا المجال؟ فكان البحث عن استكشاف أداة تخطيط المساءلة. الهدف الثالث اللي كان هو تنظيم اطر تشريعيه محدده في وضع التعرفه. احنا عندنا مشكله في العراق، هو انه ما عندنا التعرفه كلش قليله اذا ما قورنت بكميه المياه المصروفه وبالجهد الموجود لتعزيز موضوع المياه. نيكست. هنالك 6 امور اساسيه اعتمدت بروبوزل تم اقتراحها لموضوع المياه اللي هي ناولتها المعايير المقترحه من قبل سوي. اول معيار اعتمدته التسوي هو التعرفه، تحديد التعريفات، كم مبلغ التعرفه. ثاني مقترحه وثاني معايير مقترحه هو موضوع جوده الخدمات المقدمه. ثالث نوع هو موضوع تنظيم المنافسه بين المشاركين في تقديم المياه. النوع الرابع كان حماية المستهلك الذي يقدم المياه. خامسا التنظيم البيئي. سادسا تنظيم الصحة العامة. نيكست. هنالك كانت مستويات أولويات تم اقتراحها في ورشة العمل، هي 4 أولويات. كان الأولوية الأولى هي مستوى جودة الخدمة. مستوى جودة الخدمة في العراق، أول شيء أن عملية تقديم الخدمة في قطاع المياه في العراق شديد المركزية، مما يؤدي إلى تجزئة المسؤوليات بين وزارات. هنا في العراق في وزارتين هي مسؤولة عن المياه، وزارة عن المياه الخام يسموها وزارة الموارد المائية، ووزارة مسؤولة عن المياه الصالحة للشرب اللي هي تأمن وصول المياه الصالحة للشرب هي وزارة البلديات والأشغال العامة. أصعب شيء عندنا هي موضوع عملية جمع البيانات ومراقبتها، ولذلك كان أمرا ضروريا لتقييم أداء الخدمة من خلال هذه البيانات. ويوجد هناك تحديات كبيرة في هذا المجال، منها ضعف البنية التحتية الإحصائية، قلة جمع البيانات، نقص الشفافية في نقص المعلومات، عدم وجود حوافز المشغلين لتبادل البيانات، والحاجة الملحة لقوانين خاصة بحماية المستهلك. الأمر الثاني اللي تناولناه هو تحديد التعرفة. التعرفة هو تنظيم السعر المناسب للخدمة، وهو أمر بالغ الأهمية لضمان استدامة خدمات المياه والصرف الصحي، وهو يتضمن وضع قواعد للتعرفة وتحديد الأسعار والتعديلات لضمان استمرارية إمدادات المياه وتحسين مستوى الخدمة ومعايير جودة. Next. أيضا تم التركيز خلال الورشة التدريبية على موضوع الصحة العامة والبيئة. ترتكز الدورة التنظيمية للصحة العامة والبيئة على وضع لوائح الصرف الصحي وتدابير حماية البيئة، ويهدف التنظيم البيئي إلى منع الإضرار بالبيئة والحفاظ على التوازن البيئي، وهي تشمل مراقبة وتنفيذ المعايير الخاصة بمياه الصرف الصحي وتصريف النفايات السائلة ومعالجتها. أما التنظيم البيئي يشمل إنشاء وتنفيذ مجموعة من القواعد المحددة التي تهدف إلى حماية البيئة، وهي تنطبق على كل من استخراج المياه وإدارة سلسلة الصرف الصحي بهدف منع الضرر وتعزيز حماية البيئة. Next. أهم المكونات أو أهم الفعاليات المفروض اتخاذها من الحكومة اللي وضعناها خلال الورشة التدريبية اللي كانت غائبة عنا تقريبا، ما كان بشكل واضح وتوصلنا لها. فيما يخص جودة المياه، عندنا يجب أن يكون هناك تحديث لقانون المياه. القانون الآن قانون قديم أكثر من 15 سنة لم يتم تحديثه، ولهذا كان الهدف أنه من خلال الورشة طلعنا أنه تحديث قانون المياه لوضع معايير جودة الخدمة وحقوق المستهلك. ثاني هدف كان أن تفعيل عمل إدارات الجودة. المياه الآن لا تخضع للجودة اللي معايير الجودة العالمية، ولهذا كانت من الضروريات أن وضع معايير خاصة بإدارة الجودة والمنافسة. ثالث شيء إنشاء آلية لجمع البيانات إلكترونيا ودوريا لتسهيل عملية المراقبة. الهدف الآخر أو هذه تطوير برنامج إلكتروني جمع البيانات من مقدمي الخدمة بشكل منتظم ومستمر. أيضا من ضمن الأمور المهمة اللي ركزنا عليها هو الاستفادة من خبرات الدول المتقدمة. كل الدول المتقدمة في مجال المياه المفروض نستفاد من عندها. الأمر الآخر زيادة وعي المجتمعي بجودة الخدمة والمسؤولية المجتمعية. الأمر الآخر عقد ندوات حوارية مع المواطنين في المجتمعات المحلية. Next. أما الإجراء المتبع في موضوع التعرفة، مثل ما وضحت لكم أنه الآن 10% فقط نسترد من الفلوس المصروفة في مجال المياه، يعني نصرف أكثر من 90% من المبلغ بدأ نستفاد من عنده. الأمر فكانت بعض الإجراءات اللي على الحكومة أن تتخذها هي تعزيز وعي المستهلكين بأهمية دفع فواتير المياه من خلال مشاركة منظمات المجتمع المدني وإجراءات الفرق، لأن في بعض الناس ما تدفع لحد الآن فاتورة المياه. تعميم وتسريع تركيب عدادات، المفروض نستخدم عدادات ذكية يتم من خلالها تعزيز وتحصيل التعرفة. القيام أيضا بإجراء مسح لحساب التكاليف الدقيقة. أنا اليوم لما أحسب قد مصروف فعلا من المياه على المياه وعداد حقيقي وعدد حقيقي المستخدمين، بالتالي راح أعرف قد أحسب المتجاوزين على الخدمة. أيضا تطبيق من الأمور المهمة عندنا أنه لا يوجد قانون أو قوانين لا تنفذ القوانين بحق المستخدمين غير الشرعيين للمياه في العراق، ولهذا كانت من الضروريات أن وضع تطبيق القوانين والأنظمة المتعلقة بالاستخدام غير المشروع. Next. ايضا كانت كل هذه اجراءات المفروض متخذه ايضا في اجراءات الصحه والبيئه، اعداد خطه وطنيه للمتكامل الصرف الصحي وغيرها من الامور. اذا من خلال ما توصلنا اليه انه على الحكومه الاستنتاجات اللي توصلنا اليها من خلال تنفيذ الانشطه اللي تم الاشاره اليها، يمكن للعراق ان يخطو خطوات كبيره في تحسين الصحه العامه واللوائح التنظيميه في قطاع المياه، مما سيوفر في النهايه الى ممارسات اداره مياه اكثر امانا واستدامه. يتطلب من الحكومة المركزية والحكومات المحلية المصادقة على خطة العمل التي تم وضعها خلال الورشة. بالورشة طلعنا بتوصيات المفروض على الحكومة المحلية والحكومة المركزية أنه تصادق على هذه التوصيات. أيضا هنالك حاجة إلى دعوة لاعتماد تلك التغيرات في النظام وتوفير التمويل والتخصيص لبعض الأنشطة. احنا خرجنا من الورشة، خرجنا بأنه لأول مرة يعقد مؤتمر وطني للمياه في العراق ودعم من منظمة اليونيسيف، شاركت فيه في العديد من الجهات الدولية والمحلية اللي كان تاريخ 2/8/2023. نيكست. في النهايه انه احنا الان حتى ننجح عندنا بعض الفرص. اهم الفرص انه الوزاره حاسه بانه اكو هنالك فجوات تحتاج الى حل في قطاع المياه والصرف الصحي. ايضا استعدادات الوزاره على لحل هذه الثغرات. وايضا الفرصه اللي عندنا الكبيره هي اكو دعم من منظمه اليونيسيف واكو دعم من سوي. شكرا جزيلا.
Our next presentation is going to be in English. It's going to be presented by Engineer Majida. Majida, are you online with us?
Yes, Lara, how are you?
Hi. Just to introduce you, so Engineer Majida Alaoune is the Director of Water Resources and Control at the Palestinian Water Authority in Palestine. Majida, I'm going to be controlling the slides, so please let me know when you want me to move from slide to slide, okay? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be with you today at the Stockholm Water Week to present about the integrating climate risk into the wash services in the State of Palestine. The State of Palestine is depending mainly on groundwater as the main water source for both, West Bank and the Gaza Strip, in addition to another source for desalination in the Gaza Strip. The climate change was also observed in the country in the heavy rain events and for short period, causing drought, flood, contamination of the groundwater. So when we talk about integrating the climate risk into the wash services, our presentation will focus on the process, how we went through it in the country, and what are the outcomes that we find, and that was presented by the different actors. So the process was taking into consideration the climate risk assessment and the climate policy assessment, the multi-stakeholder consultation, explanation of the two actions that they were experienced in a good practice here in the country, and then we will have some kind of conclusions. Next, please. So for the process, how it was made in the country, the risk assessment, it was based on a disk review, and it was validated by the local actors. The process, it was started in 2021 with a task force on the climate policies in the State of Palestine, who did the assessment for the NAB, the NDCs, and defined the priority areas. So the first one was when we formulated a task force group, consists of the UNICEF, SIWI, we have the Water Authority, Environmental Quality Authority, with other stakeholders, where we were talking about the climate rationale for strengthening and enabling environment for the water and sanitation, and we produced some kind of product about that. It's a report, and it will be launched very soon, inshallah. Then we were looking at the climate policies in the State of Palestine as the assessment of the NAB, the NDCs, and the priority areas that we have. We have also the multi-stakeholder consultation to improved and climate resilient wash, where we have two climate change risk-informed wash baths in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. They were organized in June 22, and then we have one before in 2019. It was held in Gaza. After that, in the process, we work on developing an action plan at the national level and the subnational level. And then we went for an annual review of the agreed on action plans, which were conducted lately in July 2023. For the first step of the risk, next, okay. For the first step of the the risk-informed wash bath process in the State of Palestine, it was established as we said, the climate task force team, and it was composed of the representative from the wash and climate institutions, Palestinian Water Authority, CMW in Gaza, Environmental Quality Authority, the UNICEF, research centers like Al-Najah University, Al-Quds University, Applied Research Institute, ARIJ, as well as other organizations like the Red Crescent, UNDP, and other environmental organizations. This task force was involved in the climate risk analysis, including all the hazardous exposure, vulnerability assessment, and we reviewed the list of the governance functions and the criteria to ensure that the wash bath criteria were sensitive to the identified hazard. The results of the assessment, they were summarized. They are summarized below 3 categories, and they were responding to the affected population living in remote areas or in the vulnerable areas, the WASH infrastructure of the services with the WASH facilities, institutions, distribution systems, and the service provider who were financially exposed to the combination of poor revenue collection and increased cost of the service providers, where we have right now the tariff law has been endorsed but not yet implemented in different areas in the country. So we are now in this process at the country. We also, the results of the climate assessment that has been done in February to May 2022 was also concentrated on the water resources, because as we said that we have the groundwater resources are the most vulnerable to the climate here, and the surface water, they were both affected by the quantity and the quality due to the climate and the poor sanitation services here in the country. Next, please. So the integrated results of the climate risk assessment, how we integrate this into the WASH bath. There were several ways in which these results, they were integrated into the WASH bath. The first one is by adjusting and evaluating the criteria per the governance function. Based on these results, the emerging of the WASH bath set of criteria, they were adjusted to include new parameters tailor-made for the main hazards identified for each region, like flood, drought, heat waves, and to focus on the identified major risks for the affected population, as we said, WASH infrastructure and services and the water resources. For the Gaza Strip, they have an additional criteria that they were developed to track the activation and including, which was the activities appear in 2019 in the action plans for the urban sanitation. And it was used to evaluate the progress that they made in these areas. And the final set of the criteria, they were validated and approved by UNICEF, Palestinian Water Authority, Environmental Equality Authority, prior to the risk-informed WASH bath workshops that we conducted. The methodology and the results of the risk assessment, they were presented in plenary during the workshop, followed by sessions to discussion and validate all the results. The participants contribute with some additional information. They were expressed their consensus to the main conclusions of the risk assessment. And then we define some of the bottlenecks that they were, for that, we have a climate risk criteria where we have 26 institutions and institutional aspects, and 18 on climate adaptation. This was the conclusion from all the workshops. Next, please.
I just want to make sure that so that we can keep time, we still have 2 or 3 minutes left.
Okay, tamam. So next, please. For the implementation of the WASH bath, we did all these kind of, workshops, the criteria, and we have the annual review of the action plan that happened in July 2023. Next, please. So we worked on the bottlenecks that we have already defined during these workshops. We find that the policy and the strategy need to improve the coordination and to ensure the financial sustainability of the service providers. We find that the sector coordination and the lack of clarity between roles and responsibility between the different stakeholders. We also work on the social norms. That was a very big, a bottleneck that we find, capacity building and the capacity development, climate resilience to WASH. So after that, we work on the priority activities in order to, next please, the priority activities that we find for the West Bank and for the Gaza Strip, that was the enhancement, the input of the operation maintenance system in place, construction of information interventions, improve storage at the household level, implementation of policies, as well as in the Gaza Strip, improve the management system, develop and update the master plan for wastewater and stormwater, implementation of infrastructure for the wastewater. The national priorities, they were improving the sector financial, improving capacity, and implementation of the new water law, developing early warning system for better preparedness, and also the integration of the risk climate change as the sectorial policies. Then we have the success stories. I have
Majida?
1 minute.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the last minute. Is that okay?
Yeah. Then we have the implementation of the solutions, design and implement early warning system. That is, we have right now a green climate fund, the readiness proposal to strengthen the capacities. Next, please. We have also on the early warning system, supporting the climate change hazard and with the information at the drought. Also, we have the policies where we are ongoing, we integrated the climate change in our policies. Right now we are doing the revision of that. And then with the conclusion that we have, the last slide, please. On the conclusions, that we have the task force created to assist all the climate hazard and risk, help to start the process of integrating climate change in the wash sector in Palestine. Great engagement from the different stakeholders in the process. They led to consolidated approach and action plan with the priorities. Then the action plan with the followed from different actors. The challenges that we have is the availability of the climate change data in Palestine was a challenge. We did not have that much enough data. And also the context between the West Bank and the Gaza make it, required to do two wash baths, for one for Gaza and one for the West Bank. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Majida. يعطيكي ألف عافية. I don't know if you can hear us, but we can clap. We've been clapping after every presentation. I hope that all three speakers are with us. Omar, are you still with us?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes, we are here.
Perfect. I would like to take two questions, if anybody has them, from the audience to our speakers. I hope we're going to give the mic so that our online speakers can hear you. Our first question.
Hello, my name is Khouloud Dridi from Antea Group Belgium. I have a question for Majida. I would like to ask her, we know in Palestine, with the political situation and the war with Israel, how do you take into account the factor of the deteriorating of the structures and of the water and the sanitation into account in your hazard assessment? And also, you talked about only using groundwater resources for the water. Is there any other resources that are being done to look for more renewable and more affordable and solutions? Well, thank you.
Majida, did you hear the question?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, for the first part of the question, as you know, that this is the political situation is very complicated here, especially in areas where we have no access to the area, especially in area called Area C, and that limited our,
One minute. Sorry, Majida,
our interventions. Tamam. And also for the groundwater, yes, we have also desalination in Gaza, and we are having a master plan for the rainwater harvesting through building some dams.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
So this is a question to all three presenters. You all present your work as part of an WASH initiative. So I'm wondering about the H in the WASH, the hygiene component. None of you have put much emphasis on that, so I'm very curious about how hygiene figured in your work. Thank you.
Before we go to the speakers, I think I'm going to leave Manal to maybe just shed light on the process first, and then we can go maybe have somebody answer the question. Manal?
You are, do you hear me?
Yes.
You are totally right. So for the time being, the way how we work with UNICEF country offices, and we have representative from UNICEF who can highlight more about the on-ground activities. But WASH and hygiene is part, for example, when we implement WASH in schools, hygiene is there. When we work in health facilities, hygiene is part of it. But maybe the case studies we highlighted here because it's more about the system strengthening and during the discussion and the planning, the national representative, they are the one who decide their priorities. Once it comes, if they want to analyze, for example, the bottlenecks in water as a water sector or sanitation. But hygiene is for sure part of the analysis, but in another tools, we have that. I'm not sure if anyone of UNICEF you want to highlight or add more. I have another quick question from...
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Omar. I'm with UNICEF. And MENA is very dear to my heart. My question to any of the three panelists is, what impacts have you seen from the implementation of the recommendations of the WASH Pact on the daily lives of children and their families? Remember, we do WASH for people. It's not WASH for WASH. Thank you.
Who would like to answer? Maybe Djibouti, Jean? Jean, are you there? Did we lose Jean?
Yes, hello, can you hear
Yes.
us?
Yes, we can hear you. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I got the question.
Perfect. I'm going to
Yes,
leave
we
you
got
to
the
answer
question.
it.
Okay, thank you.
Please go
Maybe
ahead.
for the, okay, maybe I will start with the previous question on hygiene. Just to highlight that the way that the workshop were organized, there were some groups working on the different topics. Means the H, there was a group working on hygiene. And some recommendations have been made at the end of the exercise, just that those recommendations were not on the top of priority. That is why they are not there. And as we were mentioned, people from Ministry of Health and other ministries were involved. So we say something about that, just that the recommendation were not on the top of priority. Moving to the second question about the impact of all the implementation of those recommendations on the life of children. As we were mentioning, today, one of the key recommendations that we presented for Djibouti, for example, was about involving as much as possible community in the management of existing water points, because the management, mainly the daily maintenance, was most centralized on government. But through the recommendation, we succeed to involve community. So now community, they are organized around management of existing water points, and we can see that now they have more continuous access to water. The period of shortage is reduced, and with community involved now, children can have continued access to water in the community where there is an existing water point. This is just an example that I can flag out to show how the involvement of community try to improve, continue access to water to children. And this also contribute to improve their daily life. Over.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your intervention. Manal, do we have any question? We can take one question from an online speaker on our online platform. Do we have a question? You can choose one.
It's not a question, but it's a comment from Basima. She mentioned that Ramallah was facing a harsh problem once we look at the water access. So it's a priority for them more than climate change. So climate change is a secondary issue for them. So I'm not sure if Majida,
Majida, are you there?
Yes, I am there. Yes, actually, as we said that the groundwater is the main resource here in the country, and it is a scarce source. And also the climate change is affecting the recharge of the groundwater. So we are facing the drought, we are facing water scarcity here in the country because we have limitation of the water resources. And I think the impact of the climate change on the groundwater, this is what we are looking at and we are going to deal with.
Tamam. Thank you so much. We're going to move to our next segment, which is our panel discussion. To introduce you, can we please have the slide up, please? To briefly introduce you to our panelists, we have Her Excellency Shahira Wahbi. Her Excellency is the ambassador seconded to the League of Arab States. She's the Director of Housing, Water Resources and Disaster Risk Reduction Department, and she's based in Cairo. We also have Mr. Idris Dia, who's the Director of Economic and Social Infrastructure for Global Practices Department at the Islamic Development Bank Group. And finally, we have Mr. Ihab Al-Amle. He's the Wash and Climate Change Officer at the UNICEF MENA Regional Office in Amman, and he has a background in water management and environment. We actually prepared very nicely for this session with 2 questions for every panelist, but I think because we don't have a lot of time, I think we're going to stick to 1 question each. And then leave some more space for the audience to ask you some questions. If we didn't have a lot of questions, we can move to the second round of questions. Does that sound okay? To start off with, Your Excellency, we can start off with you. Our first question was based on the idea of us discussing the challenges of water governance implementation in the region. From your experience, especially working with the League of Arab States and different countries around the region, what are the challenges of implementation, do you think?
Thank you very much. Let me first say that water and sanitation are of great importance to the Arab region. Even this year, the celebration of the Arab Water Day was under the slogan Accelerating Change to solve the water and sanitation crisis, conserving life, which is also conserving water, which is also preserving life. This slogan manifests the importance that we give to the water and sanitation issues. However, this issue faces great challenges in terms of management, distribution, and ensuring the availability of clean and healthy water for many communities in the region. Disparities in wash infrastructure are wide across the Arab countries and exacerbated by conflict and migration flows, which make water and sanitation service virtually inaccessible to many people. Further, it is a known fact the Arab region is the most affected by water scarcity, pollution, and limited sanitation in many countries, and this is all related to the effect of also climate change. So the different elements affecting water in the Arab region and the challenges facing water availability and sustainable use have been thoroughly explored. All the presentations I have heard even only in this conference, hundreds of presentations analyzing and explaining what is the problem, climate change, desertification, the problems associated with economic growth, among others. They have all been consistently enumerated. So the situation is described and the challenges are identified in all the forums. So another thing is that the governance framework exists in the League of Arab States. There is a governance. In 2008, the Arab Ministerial Water Council was established as the highest policy body for water in the region, supported by the heads of states. There is nothing more than that, who endorsed this creation. So an institutional framework entrusted with the task of enacting the necessary policies for WASH is there. Another thing on governance, a strategy for water security in the Arab region, which has the title To Meet the Challenges and Future Needs of Sustainable Development, have been approved also by the heads of states. This strategy has been updated last year, and now currently we are preparing a new action plan, updated action plan. A climate change master document was adopted in 2012 and revised in 2017. Namely the Arab Climate Change Action Plan, which include a complete cluster about water sector that recognizes WASH services as key adaptation and mitigation strategies in addressing climate change challenges facing the region. So an up-to-date governance infrastructure encompassing national policies and institutional arrangement is already functional within the League of Arab States. All what the Arab region needs now is to implement the strategies that have been adopted to achieve water security and improve the management of water resources and provide sanitation and hygiene service. I have enumerated many objectives that have been identified as policies: increase the efficiency, invest in developing strong advanced infrastructure to promote awareness, support knowledge, financial support, and so on. Technology, science policy interface, and so on. So the situation is described, the challenges are known, the objectives have been identified as well. So I believe we have to revert to actions. But why actions are not up to the expectations and requirements? What is lacking in this governance structure? I think the answer is very simple and straightforward. We have to have a financial system for water and particularly for WASH. We have to have coordination capacities. We talk about we need to coordinate. Yes, we know we need to coordinate, but how and put it into action? Effective monitoring, a system, a comprehensive setup of monitoring seriously with indicators shows us where we stand. And then, above all, making WASH a priority, because without making it a priority, we will not go anywhere. It is competing with many other sectors and other priorities. So I believe managing these issues will inevitably lead to overcoming common challenges and enhance WASH in a sustainable manner in the region. I can stop here, but I also can reflect that some actions that are being taken within the Arab Ministerial Water Council. The Arab Ministerial Water Council is attempting to enact regional policies and support policy reforms to extend water and sanitation services accessibility. We are trying to mobilize funds and push for improved budgetary allocations, push for linking the policies with the science and generate evidence and support innovation in implementation, and provide capacity building for member states and support expertise for better WASH coverage. In spite of all this, I believe there is a need for prompt action to foster change and accelerate it. This cannot happen without strong commitment, joint efforts and partnerships between governments, regional organizations, civil society. The private sector has a role, the donors, community, and all the other stakeholders. I will stop here, and then maybe we
can have the discussion.
Yes, and another round.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Before we move to the financing part, maybe it's good to just sum up a few words of what Her Excellency said. So we were basically discussing what are the challenges of implementing better water governance. And one of the major issues she was saying is basically we need to put WASH as a priority, which will obviously affect funding. And now that we are moving to funding, it's good that we ask Mr. Idrissa. So our question to you based on funding is, how does the Islamic Development Bank assess the potential impact and sustainability of the projects that you're already implementing? And how do you make sure that you can provide financial support to increase WASH services strengthening in the region?
Well, thank you, Lara, and thank you, attendees. I think Her Excellency has introduced very well part of what I'm going to say, in the sense that the situation of reference is known. MENA is facing acute water stress, and the issue is being compounded by climate change, but also fragility, which doesn't simplify also the erection of a proper enabling environment and rational exploitation of resources. In such context, development banks, financial institutions, of course, have more responsibility and are deploying more efforts to carefully select the type of interventions and the size of interventions they have to support with governments, making sure from the onset that you talked about impact and sustainability. So making sure from the onset that they are choosing with the government the right intervention that can have a significant dent on the matter of access and quality of services, plus the issue of sustainability. And here we should remember that sustainability goes beyond only having access to sufficient quantity of water, but it takes into account also the ability to have long-lasting impact on the lives of people. It was mentioned earlier. In that respect, we make sure from the very beginning when we receive concept of projects from the governments to support, make sure that one, this is the right intervention for the right problem. Second, that there are adequate studies, engineering studies, feasibility studies that can back a proper design of the intervention. We make sure that there is a proper recipient environment in terms of policy making, in terms of regulation. We make sure from the onset also that minimum capacities to execute proper interventions are in place in order to have impact. We make also sure that the right technology is chosen that can preserve the resources, use it in the most efficient way. And we make sure also that the governments are able, in the course of preparing the project, that they are able to involve the private sector. She mentioned it, as this is a key element of sustainability, especially when we talk about operations and maintenance. In many countries, we have finance projects that had difficulty to be implemented properly because capacity are not there in the public sector often, and private sector was not enough involved to be able to have lasting operations of the infrastructure and then reach the end goal for which they were designed. But in doing so, we make sure also that there is proper tariff setting. This is very important. Most of the presenters mentioned, if you don't have the proper tariffs in place to ensure proper recovery, at least operation and maintenance, not speaking about investment costs, then you won't be able to have lasting infrastructure and therefore you will not have sustainable impact and so forth. So I will pause there for the time being, but these are key questions. And I would insist on the last one is the importance of also pushing through projects to change behaviors. Because a lot of water is wasted, including in the MENA, despite the fact that water is very scarce resource. The level of leakages and losses in the system are very high. The commercial losses linked to the fact that people are not always ready to pay for water is very important. So all these things need to be addressed, and we try to assess those elements if they are in place before providing the funding. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe we can have this discussion later, but one of the things that we were always discussing is how can we increase the level of funding for WASH strengthening and or WASH services in the region. And maybe we can discuss this later. And maybe you can tell us how most of the organizations here and or the countries here can make sure that increased funding is there for the MENA region. For the next question, we have Mr. Ihab from UNICEF. So one of the major things that we always discuss and most of the donors are always talking about is youth engagement. And it's always very hard for participants and or organizations to think of how we can increase youth engagement in these topics, especially in WASH governance and water governance. But maybe Ihab can tell us more about the importance of engaging youth and how that can contribute to more inclusive and effective decision-making in the MENA region.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Lara, for the question.
Can you hear him?
And, yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. And thanks for all the panelists for the great discussion. So, yeah, indeed, youth engagement can play a crucial role in terms of fostering, let's say, a more inclusive and effective decision-making processes when it comes especially to water management and policies. This can be done through, from my opinion at first, diverse perspectives and innovation that young people bring to the table. So young people bring a fresh perspective, innovative ideas, a different outlook on challenges. All these, their involvement ensures that a wider range of different viewpoints is considered while we are shaping the WASH-related policies. So, which can lead also to a comprehensive and more balanced, let's say, WASH policies and solution. So when we are talking about innovation, we have an example from WASH program in Jordan. Jordan Country Office in UNICEF, they have been supporting two WASH innovation hubs with the support from UNICEF in two universities, the Jordan University for Science and Technology and the Hashemite University. So these hubs were created as inclusive spaces for the talents to grow and also to assist entrepreneurs and to cultivate the innovation within the WASH sector.
So they come up with...
Exactly, so they come up with the innovation ideas and also with innovation to support their policies and to support the water governance within the WASH sector.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, for the...
One example of an
yeah, exactly. So, for example, they have been supporting some of the projects in the lab. They have this lab, for example, I think in Jordan University for Science and Technology. They have been supporting a project of young people who has they wanted to be engaged in the policy making processes. So they provided a specific platform, online platform, to have the opinion of different young people to participate on this platform. So this is an important part that to support the WASH sector. Another thing is the capacity building for the young people. So involving young people in policy discussions and implementations as well fosters their capacity to become the future leaders and decision makers as well as being the experts in the water field and the wash fields. So for instance, also an example from UNICEF, we have been supporting at the MENA region and globally the youth participatory action research. This is an approach for engaging young people in the research process. It's starting from selecting the idea of the research, let's say, designing the research itself, then collecting the data, analyzing the findings, and then drawing the conclusions for their research. And this will empower the young people to investigate what affects them the most in terms of climate and water and climate related issues, and also to have an informed participation from their side on the policy and social change. And also we have an example from Tunisia, actually. It was for the youth bar, a group of young people who was participating on the youth bar. They have the group of young people aged between 14 to 24. They have represented their findings to the head of delegations in Tunisia to the Conference of Parties in order to incorporate their insights and ideas and their perspective into the national climate policy decisions. So the last thing that I want to talk about the advocacy and awareness, of course. So after we building the capacities of the young people, it's important. Young people often they have a strong sense and willingness of social and environmental responsibility. So when we are providing them with the capacities needed, so maybe we can provide, they will be, their engagement can lead to an increased awareness in the whole community, because they will be the drivers for the advocacy at the community level and at the national level. So they will drive the advocacy efforts. They can encourage the positive behavior at their community level. And also young people are often more versatile across different fields. So compared to, let's say, the older generations, with all respect, so their curiosity, their adaptability, with their adaptability as well, and a diverse interest lead them to engage in various sector and different fields. So yeah, with that being said, I will stop here and over to you, Lara.
Thank you so much. Yeah. We're actually right on time. We can take actually quite a number of questions. So we're going to start off with the lovely lady. Okay, Manal. For our online speakers, for our online audience, you can please place your question in the chat box. We will also take some questions from our online platform.
Hello again. Just to present myself again, Khouloud Dridi from Antia Group Belgium, but I'm originally actually from Tunisia, so I'm quite aware with what happened in the MENA region. So my question is mainly for Your Excellency, Mrs. Shahira. So I want to ask, sometimes legislation and the action plans take some time to happen. And now in the MENA region, we know we are definitely in a drought phase. We have been facing heat waves the whole summer. There was wildfires everywhere, also in Tunisia. The dams are basically empty everywhere. The groundwater is being exploited. So my question is there any urgent action that can be done now? I can take an example of nature-based solutions, of using the indigenous knowledge, micro projects that happens at a very local scale, but also it's very important to focus on the maintenance of what we have now in order to be able to build on that. Thank you.
Shahira, would you like to?
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, you are 100% right. Regional policies take time. And what is happening at the national level and actually at local levels. The most vulnerable and affected areas are rural areas and at the local, very minuscule level in the countries. So I don't think regional policies will be able to touch base on these issues. This is going to be national efforts by the countries themselves to address these issues. But they will be guided by regional policies and benefiting from certain services like capacity building, like networking abilities that these organizations like the League of Arab States has, exposure for the local governments to regional and international forums. This is how mobilization of resources can take place. But like, to be honest with you, like direct effects, no. Only maybe through Arab specialized organizations who are working on the ground. But at the level of the League of Arab States, this is a policy organization. It's a regional organization. So it addresses integration between the countries. It addresses overarching policies. But coming to the grassroots places, I think it is more the Arab specialized organizations like the Arab Organization for Agricultural Development, the Arab Center for Desertification, and other agencies which are working on the ground on projects. On, for example, ACSAD, which is the Center for Desertification and Arid Lands, is working on the production of drought-resistant seeds, which is distributing to the countries at the local level. So it is contributing, as you said, in micro projects in the countries to better the situation. But at a regional level like this, I don't think it is possible to address local, extremely local problems. Thank you.
Thank you. We can have another question. Does anybody have another question? Manal, do we have questions online?
Yeah, we have one comment online about climate, about the finance. Is the problem in the finance or in corruption?
Okay, maybe we can rearrange that question. But basically, it's a good question because it's good to know. So are we, as a MENA region, allocating enough resources for WASH? Or is the problem that we cannot allocate that much money or financing? And how can we increase it? I'm going to merge two questions together. We can, actually, both of you can answer to that.
Okay, go ahead first.
Okay, thank you for the rearranged question. It will simplify our lives in responding to that. It is, I think, Her Excellency Sharira has mentioned part of the answer. To increase the proportion of financing that governments and financial institutions, including multilaterals, would dedicate to the water sector, the substratum is to have the governments prioritize those, because governments, remember, are the first source of funding. Contrary to the perception, development banks, IFAs, are not the first financiers of development. It's governments. If you combine all the MDBs together, they count on about 8% of overall infrastructure financing, including water. So who is the main financiers? It's governments, private sector. So, but unless priority has clearly emerged from those governments, then it will be difficult to prioritize the financing of the sector. We MDBs also, we are demand-driven institutions, meaning we don't come and impose to Tunisia that water should be your priority. Government has to come to us and say, we want in our cooperation with you to prioritize water. Of course, we may have some influence in terms of the country dialogue by suggesting that we go more in this area or another, but the government are in the driver's seat. So the first thing is government to prioritize by making the proper arbitrages inside the government into the priority areas to support. Unfortunately, everybody agrees that water is vital, but it's not always prioritized in the investment requests that we receive. Nevertheless, we do more and more, and we met among the MDBs 2 days ago. I think it's a good news. World Bank and other institutions are currently trying internally also to generate more resources to prioritize also the sector in their own intervention and in the dialogue with member countries. So I think this is a good news, but private sector would need also to be much more driven into the picture. Let me stop there.
Thank you so much. Your Excellency, would you like to add?
Actually, I concur completely with Mr. Idrissa that if the governments, they do not request, nobody is going to respond to a non-request. So this is number one. Number two, the involvement of the private sector is important, but in our region, there is an ethical problem. An ethical problem between making profit from water, which is a human right, and putting a price for water. This is particularly in the context where poverty is widely spread. How can I ask a poor person to pay for a life-saving element, which is water, which he cannot afford? Maybe then they will think we will sell the air afterwards. So this is an ethical dialogue that we need to talk about openly and to come to a conclusion so that the private sector can come in a comfortable manner. Because let us be frank, private sector, they are profit-generating sector. Nobody will come to invest in any sector without wanting profit. Or why is he there? At the same time, there is the ethical problem or the issue of how can we sell water? So we go around it, we say we are selling the services and the connections and so on. But in the end, we are putting a price to this water which is coming to the people. So this dialogue needs to start. This dialogue, if we come with concrete outcome from this dialogue, this will encourage the private sector to invest in the water sector on one part, and it will comfort the people to know that we are not selling the water. We are not selling the life-saving element for the people.
That they're selling the service.
Yes, thank you.
It's very interesting what you just said, because this is something we are facing in most of the countries we work with as SIWI. And when we always talk about water tariffs, it's always a very sensitive issue, because at the end, local communities do not differentiate between the idea of water providers selling them water in response to selling them the service when it comes to energy, pumping, etc. But it's a very good intervention. Thank you, Your Excellency. I think we have room for one question for online. Okay. No question?
Maybe when Her Excellency Cecilia do the closing remark, can reflect a bit about COP, because the question is related to COP28, if this might help the implementation of the policies.
It's very good because we know that UNICEF is playing a big role in the next COP meeting. So I would like to maybe close this session. Before we close, actually, I'd like to just make sure that we are all here after the session if you want to ask any questions. We also have our UNICEF colleagues from Palestine and from Iraq, if you have more questions about the cases in these countries. Last but not least, we want to welcome Ms. Cecilia Sharp, who's the Director of WASH, Climate and Energy and Environment and Disaster Risk Reduction at UNICEF, for closing. Thank you.
So, is it on? Yeah? Okay, it's just that you don't hear yourself, that's true. So, thank you everybody for being at this extremely interesting session. And as we have come to the end on the strengthening wash system for a water secure MENA, I like to recognize all the knowledge that has been shared today by all the participants and the meaningful discussions that have taken place and the engagement of all of you. And I was really thrilled by the really clever questions that have been asked, and also, of course, by the answers. Throughout this session, we have explored the critical role of governance in addressing water challenges facing the MENA region, particularly in the context of climate change and water security, which we understand is severely hitting this region particularly. The case studies and the good practices presented have been highlighting innovative approaches, tools and mechanisms, and employed to enhance the WASH system, strengthening the different participating countries in different ways. We have had the opportunity to hear from distinguished panelists sharing their perspectives and deeply appreciate the insights from Her Excellency Shahira Wabi, who shed light on the challenges of implementing water governance in the region and need to prioritize WASH, that I think came out really strong from your speeches. Also reflecting, of course, of the role of the League of Arab States in coordinating and harmonizing water and sanitation policies. So Mr. Idris Adia from the Islamic Development Bank provide us with valuable insights in the funding priorities and investment strategies available. But he also mentioned that most investment needs to come from government and private sector themselves. So the banks only play a role when governments come and ask for support. This knowledge, I think, is really critical in securing financial support for climate-resilient WASH services and for a more water-secure MENA region. Additionally, the perspective of Eyab El-Amle, our young leader and advocate, has enlightened us of the importance of having youth engagement in addressing governance challenges and the unique contributions and new perspectives that young people actually bring to this sector. And I was really happy to hear about the collaborations with universities bringing in new ideas and innovations. So let us all remember that in the pursuit of water security and sustainable WASH services, they require collective efforts and the involvement of all stakeholders, including governments, funding agencies, civil society organizations, youth, and more. And somewhere there, I think we have the UN system as well. It's only through partnerships and active engagement that we can overcome the challenges posed by climate change that we are all dealing with. So before we conclude, I like to extend my gratitude as well to SIWI as being a really good partner, and colleagues at UNICEF for your dedicated collaborative efforts in enhancing WASH systems in the MENA region, and for organizing this really informative and interactive session during the World Water Week. It was my first silent session, but I think it worked quite well. I was shifting between the phone and the mic, but it worked well. And as we continue the journey towards a water-secure future, let us remain committed to the principles of sustainable development. I added the climate-resilient solutions that can withstand shocks and stresses, and of course, inclusive governance. We need to continue to work together to ensure the realization of the human right to water and sanitation in this particular water-scarce region. And thank you all for the active participation. We started there, but it's really interesting to see that the all insightful questions that you asked and also the very clever responses that we got from the distinguished panels. So just to thank you there, and I wish you a continued inspiring World Water Week. So can I just say on the last question on COP, did you want to have a very, I think, well, sometimes we kick you out, but you never know. We were almost carried out in one session yesterday. Anyway, so just to say that UNICEF is engaged, of course, in the preparation for the COP. And we are engaged in the water pavilion. There is a day for energy and, no, for food security and water. I think it's the 8th. of December, and UNICEF will for sure be there. We have two different approaches. One is water security for all, very similar to the discussions that we are having here, and the other one will be around the contribution of unsafely managed sanitation to greenhouse gases from methane gases particularly, which is a huge thing. A lot of new science coming out from that. And I think we have an overall call from a partnership which is really to include WASH in the follow-up so we will be able to monitor also WASH intervention in the climate action agenda. So this is a call that we have all brought together. So overall, we are hugely engaged. We also have a Children's Day, Youth and Children's Day, and we will have the executive director there representing UNICEF, and we hope for many interesting, of course, dialogues for her with a lot of partners. So that was a few words only. Thank you.